Hello, and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick Drenzaria. This week we're taking a look at the film The Evil Dead from 1981.
Yep. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Oh, wait, wrong movie. Groovy. There we go. That's technically the second one, but anyway. So yeah, Evil Dead came out on October 15th, 1981. And the budget was $375,000.
And it made a whopping $2.7 million in the box office.
Oh, $2.4 million in the US. So that's
okay.
That's domestically, and then yeah. So is this the lowest budgeted movie we've done so far?
What was the budget for Max Headroom?
Well, that might have had that. Yeah, that's a good question. Whether that had a lower budget. Doesn't really say on here, huh?
Yeah, I can't find a budget for that.
Nope. So that one might have cost less, for all we know.
Yeah. It was the first film, or the first commercial film directed by Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi, yeah, because he'd done like short films and Super 8 stuff before that.
Yeah. I believe that like his last student film before this was basically the same story, just made with an even smaller budget. I believe it was called The Book of the Dead. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it was called Within the Woods. That's what it was.
And I think this is the first movie we've done that's just straight up a horror movie.
Yep. I mean, I count Batman Forever as a horror movie myself, but...
Superhero movie. It's a superhero movie. The Alien movies technically are horror movies, but they're also sci-fi movies. Yeah, whereas this one, it's just, I mean, it's a horror movie.
And it's the introduction, not only to the wider Evil Dead franchise, but also to Ash, the protagonist of most of the Evil Dead stuff.
Ash Williams, yep. And it's interesting watching this when I'm more familiar with the other ones, because he's way different in this one than he is in the next two.
Yeah, a very different character.
It's sort of like when you watch like the first Mad Max movie and seeing what he was like before his life basically fell apart. You know, he's just this normal guy, and then he goes fucking crazy.
It is amazing just how Ash is portrayed throughout this movie, you know, without getting too far ahead, but he doesn't really feel like the main character until you get to like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Alien was kind of like that as well.
Yeah.
Where you think like Tom Skerritt's the lead, but then surprise, he gets killed in the vents like halfway through the movie. I think this is the first B movie we've done on this podcast, technically.
Yeah.
It might count as the first B movie we've done, because like...
I think so.
Alien is a B movie concept, but they like...
They had the budget.
Yeah, and also Ridley Scott, you know, and a good cast. Whereas this, like, nobody really knew who anybody was in this at the time. And on original release, it wasn't really deemed a financial success either. Like, it made money, obviously, but only because it cost so little to make.
Yeah.
You know? So I guess that also makes this the first cult film we've done on the podcast.
And the movie actually got helped a lot by Stephen King.
Stephen King, yeah. I was going to mention that in the trivia. But yeah, he said it was one of his favorite horror movies.
Yeah.
And that ended up like getting it more distribution rights and getting it more attention. And of course, that quote he has is like on a bunch of the posters. So yeah, you can partly thank the popularity of this movie for, you know, on Stephen King, basically.
Yeah.
And also, this gives us an excuse to talk about Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi, of course. I don't really know any of the other cast members in this, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe they appeared in other Sam Raimi productions later on, just as like kind of a, hey, we worked together once, because
I know that the actress for Cheryl later reappeared in Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I think Linda's actress in this movie reappeared as well.
And it was interesting reading about some of the production history of this movie too, because it was basically just made by two brothers and some of their college friends.
Yeah.
And I was also amazed to find out Sam Raimi was younger than I am right now when he made this movie. Yeah, he was only like 20 when he made this. Like when production started. But it was just a silly movie that they made on the cheap. They never thought it would be a huge success, and look at where they are now.
Yeah, it skyrocketed Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell's careers.
Yeah. This also is technically the first X-rated movie we've done on the podcast.
Really? It was X-rated?
Yeah. Apparently this originally received an X rating due to the violence. And it was later re-rated NC-17, which that was the rating that replaced the X rating in the 90s. Which, that's another thing. Maybe I'm just too desensitized at this point, but I don't think this movie is that violent. I mean...
I could see for the time it getting rated that high, but yeah, I think nowadays...
I guess if you haven't seen like too many Italian horror movies, like this is pretty shocking.
We don't talk about Italian horror movies. A little too in the body horror range.
Cannibal Holocaust, Jesus Christ. Which don't ever ask to do a podcast on that movie. It's never gonna happen. And also it's nice to watch this again because it's a good horror movie.
Yes. It's very good.
Because I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the horror genre, just because there's ones I really, really like, but then there are so many bad ones, too. Yeah.
And this was something that I was going to mention a little bit later, but I might as well mention it now. This was actually like the first horror movie that I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah. And I think it kind of ruined me a little bit. Because it set up such high standards for me for horror movies.
Like how, in terms of like...
Like, I have not seen a single horror movie produced within like the past 10 to 15 years that I've actually found scary.
Oh,
or
in terms of like
even like slightly unnerving. It's like, I find them as like really shoddily made comedies almost.
Okay.
Like, to use as an example, It Chapter 1. Everyone around me was like terrified of the movie, and I was like crying from laughter by the end of the movie.
Huh.
Like, I don't know if you've seen It Chapter 1, but I think it's a terrible movie, and it's terrible at being a horror movie.
I have seen it, actually. I didn't like it either, if that's what you're asking. I didn't laugh at it, but I didn't like it. Although all part of it is just the source material. I'm not really a,
huge fan of.
Like, I love Stephen King, and yet for some reason that's one of the ones I've never been able to get into. But yeah, that's interesting. I was like wondering, like, was it the scariness of it, or like the pacing? Is that another thing? Like, just because this is a very fast-paced movie.
Yeah, it's pretty short too. It's only like 85 minutes.
It is, yeah.
Which is a welcome change of pace from the Christopher Nolan Batman films.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because Dark Knight Rises was like almost 3 hours. That also might make it hard to, like, recap some of the plot, because it's such a...
It's a pretty bare bones plot.
Yeah, it just cut it down to its basics, basically.
Yep. And I actually feel like that helps it out quite a bit, because it keeps up the pace.
I guess we are kind of getting into our initial thoughts on the movie right now, but I was just curious. So, this is like... I guess you kind of talked about that already, saying it was like one of the first horror movies you saw, and like...
Because I actually saw Army of Darkness first, and then I heard that it was not just a sequel, but it was the third movie in a franchise. And so
that
I was
was the
like,
first
okay.
one I saw too, because you kept talking about it. You were describing it to me one day, and I'm like, I got to see this movie, and I didn't know it was a sequel either. So, and it's so weird watching that and then seeing the first two movies because the tone is like
completely different
in every single one too. Because the first one is just a horror movie. The second one
is a horror comedy.
It's horror, but it also has like dark comedy, and then the third one is just a comedy. Like the
third one's a comedy with horror elements in there.
The third one is basically like Monty Python meets like Ray Harryhausen or something. Like you can't take it seriously at all.
I was actually talking to one of my friends the other day about this movie. And I'd actually watched all, 3 movies and the TV show with him and a couple other friends. And he said he was trying to recommend the series to a coworker. And he said it's so hard to recommend someone watch it just because every single movie is so different from each other.
It is, yeah. Where do you start?
Yeah.
I feel like actually the second one might be a good starting point because it has both horror and comedy in it. So it's kind of
and like the first 10 minutes of it are basically just a recap of this movie.
That's another thing. I think it's just because of how much I liked the other two that this one's not as memorable for me as the sequels.
I think I'm in the same boat. And, I'll save more of this towards the end, but I was surprised with how much I actually liked this movie rewatching it.
It's a good movie. I will say that, especially considering the budget. I mean, some of the stuff they were able to do, despite the lack of money, I think is impressive. The thing with horror movies for me also is another thing is I usually prefer movies that are more atmospheric.
This one does a great job of being atmospheric.
And more of like build up, rather than like gore and like violence. But I actually think this does a good job of balancing the atmosphere and the violence.
Yeah.
Like, it has a lot of atmospheric moments, but it also has some, some gore in there as well.
It has a lot of gore.
we can get into recapping the plot now.
So, the movie starts off with a very atmospheric kind of shot of the woods as you see the car containing our main characters driving into Tennessee.
Tennessee? Oh, that's an interesting setting.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll go see Graceland and find Elvis or something. But
and we also get an introduction to one of my favorite characters in the movie, the Evil. It's this unseen entity that like flies around everywhere, essentially.
Basically, the camera.
Yeah, it's just the camera. I love every scene that's from the perspective of the Evil.
That's kind of a bit of a like Hitchcock kind of thing going on there with the camera just following everything, but yeah.
And I gotta say, I love how you never see what it looks like.
Nope.
Which is one thing that I didn't really like about Evil Dead 2 or the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series.
They show what it looks like.
Yeah, I think it's better when you don't know what it looks like.
It's been a while since I've seen the other ones. I didn't even know. Like, you're probably more knowledgeable about the Evil Dead like universe than I am, because I've seen one episode of that show.
I mean, the first season's really good.
It is on Netflix right now, and once I'm done watching these, I might watch it. Oh my god.
I'd highly recommend it.
I heard a cat upstairs knocking over rocks. Yeah.
Anyway, we are also introduced to Ash in this movie. I don't know if it's just in this scene alone, because it's the only time where I really noticed it. It looks like he has a Mo Howard haircut.
I was gonna mention that actually, because Sam Raimi is apparently, he puts references to the Three Stooges in his movies. Yeah. Like whenever he has like a stand-in, he always puts it in the credits as a fake Shemp. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like gonna say, like, his hair kind of looks like Mo's hair.
It's just a weird little thing that I notice every time I see this movie and go, huh.
don't know who would be Larry and who would be Curly in this, but anyway. I guess Larry and Curly would just be Sam and Ted Raimi. But the car ends up going out of control.
Yep.
Because there's another car.
It's heading towards it. And so the evil, like, influences the car that they're in, so they can't get out of the way in time, but they manage to get out just in time, which then leads to a fantastic line of dialogue.
Which line is that?
So, Scotty is driving the car, and he's like, nothing in this damn car works, except the horn. And so he honks the horn, causing two nearby fishermen to wave. He sticks his head out of the car, looks back at him, and says, go to hell, I wasn't honking at you.
And actually, there's a little note I wrote about it. The two fishermen are actually played by Sam Raimi and the producer.
Really? There's actually quite a bit of humor in this beginning scene.
There is, yeah. And in other parts of the movie, but yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed like little bits of like dark humor here and there. It becomes more pronounced in the sequels, obviously. But...
yeah. I think one of my favorite things early on, it's still when they're in the car and they're going over that bridge.
Okay.
And part of it collapses. Ash, like, opens the door, sticks his head out, and gives this, like, slightly horrified facial expression, and then jumps back in the car.
And they've rented a place really cheap. I wonder why.
In the middle of the woods. And also, just real quick, I want to know, who owns this cabin?
The demons, maybe? I don't know.
Because someone owns it, and, later we find out that there was a professor of archaeology staying there. But it's pretty clear that he doesn't own it, because someone else is renting out the cabin.
Well, he probably doesn't own it because he's dead now.
True. But, like, you feel like the cabin owner would at least kind of know that there's, like, demons out there in these woods.
Yeah, okay, so they go to the cabin. 5 people rent a cabin in the woods, and then fucked up stuff happens. There you go, there's the plot. Not a very original plot. I wonder if something bad will happen to them in this cabin.
Impossible.
That would floor me if they actually went that route. If they just like, oh no, they just live in this cabin. The end.
It's just a pleasant weekend getaway for 2 couples and a sister who's fifth wheeling.
But getting back to you mentioned the camera work. For being low budget, the camera work and the editing are very good.
They're, like, top notch.
Like, there's, like, these weird, like, he, like, does these unusual choices that, like, help build tension. Sam Raimi, he definitely seems like a person who went to film school,
Yeah.
And the music helps, too. It's again, an unusual score, and it works.
It does.
There's, like, wind blowing while,
Cheryl is, like, sketching a clock.
I couldn't remember most of the characters' names.
Yeah. I actually had to look up and write down the names, because I remembered Ash, Scotty, and Linda.
Ash, Scotty, and Linda were the only ones I didn't know any of it.
So, Ash's sister is named Cheryl, and Scotty's girlfriend is named Shelly.
And she's, like... Was it Cheryl? Is that who's...
Yep. Ash's sister is... sketching a nearby clock.
Yep, and her hand and pencil just start going crazy, and this causes her to draw an evil SpongeBob.
And, like, all the while, there's, like, wind coming in from the window. Everything is kind of shaking.
Yeah. Very weird stuff going on.
It's a pretty eerie scene.
Yeah. I just found it funny, though, that drawing actually looks like SpongeBob.
It does look like an evil SpongeBob.
Doodle Bob. It looks like Doodle Bob. There we go.
That would be a different movie. Ash versus Doodle Bob.
Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the pencil. Maybe it's the crack master. I don't know. They have dinner. Just a series of short scenes. Also, kind of what this movie feels like too.
They try to move through character establishment as quick as they can, just so that we can get to the spooky, scary stuff.
Yeah, which is why I don't remember most of their names. And isn't his full name Ashley?
Yeah, that wasn't established, I think, until Army of Darkness. But yeah, his full name is Ashley J. Williams.
Someone says Ashley to him in this movie, though.
Oh, they do?
I don't remember who it was, but somebody calls.
Oh, it might have been Cheryl when she was running back in later in the film.
And then they have dinner. And then we get a scene of they have dinner. Ash makes a toast to a Greek friend.
Yeah.
Who I don't know. Anyway. Before they hear some noise in the cellar.
And so Ash and Scotty go down to investigate, where they find an ancient book.
Yep. I'll be honest though, it was about this point in the movie where I was starting to realize the acting in this
it's not that good.
No. Aside from Bruce Campbell, they're all a little flat.
Yeah. It's definitely everyone's first acting experience.
Yeah. Well, besides college short films of Sam Raimi, I guess.
Yeah.
With a few of them, but yeah. But I'll cut them some slack. You know, they weren't even sure this movie would get seen anywhere for one thing. So
yeah,
and then we move on. Scotty, he goes down in the cellar.
He finds a gun, which he does not follow gun safety rules with.
Nope.
At one point, he points it directly at Ash.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Ash goes down there with him because he
Yep.
He was calling down to him, but he wasn't responding. And I gotta say, the pacing is very good.
Yes.
It immediately builds tension and grabs your attention, and you just want to know what the hell is going on. Like, why is all this weird shit happening?
Yep.
What are they gonna find in this cellar? You know, like they cut things down to the basics, but
it really feels like it helps the movie.
It does, yeah. I mean, it doesn't really have to be like that complicated with this story, but
yeah.
And there was also an interesting camera move that they chose, where they had it starting at Bruce Campbell, and then it like moved around the whole cellar back to Bruce Campbell again, and I think it was all done in one shot.
Yeah,
that was an interesting choice right there. You know. And it's just those unusual choices like this, I think, that for one set the film apart from other stuff of the genre, and also make it just a bit unsettling and bizarre.
It also kind of establishes Sam Raimi's directing style pretty well. Like, even in the Spider-Man movies, you get some, interesting shots, especially Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2, whenever I, watch that movie, the one scene that always reminds me that Sam Raimi directed it is when Doc Ock's arms go crazy for the first time.
Oh yeah,
because that feels like something out of a horror movie.
It does.
Scotty, he says boo. Startles Ash, have that obligatory fake scare in there. He shows Ash some guns in the basement. There's a Hills Have Eyes poster, which I'll be honest, I'm not really a huge Hills Have Eyes fan. But,
apparently whoever owns the cabin is.
I think Wes Craven has done better movies, but anyway, that's getting off topic. It is better than Hills Have Eyes Part 2, I'll give it that.
There's a Part 2?
Yep. And if you want to have an idea of how bad that movie is, one scene is a dream sequence from the point of view of a dog. Or no, it was a flashback from the point of view of a dog.
That's even worse.
But basically, they find this weird book written in a different language with bizarre drawings in it.
Yep. And in later movies, it's called the Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
Yep, written by H.P. Lovecraft.
In this one, it's called, I believe, the Notaron Dementi. Oh, Demento, sorry.
Dr. Demento.
Which is essentially an ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead.
Yep.
And they also find a tape recorder belonging to a Dr. Nobi, an archaeologist professor who happened to discover the book and decided to read it while in a cabin in the middle of the woods.
He's a professor and he has the word no in his name. Because he knows a lot of things. That's convenient. I love how, and he also gives some exposition, too. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And Scotty also, there was one line that I thought was funny here. Scotty sees this weird skeleton thing. Well, I don't know what it was exactly. And then he says to Ash, "This kind of looks like your old girlfriend."
Oh, yeah. Isn't it when he's holding up the dagger? Isn't that when he says it?
Was it a dagger? Is that what it was?
I think it was the ancient Sumerian dagger.
All I remember is it had a skeleton on it, but anyway. And so they find the tape downstairs, they play it.
Which ends up awakening something within the woods.
And it's like talking about like burial practices and stuff. And
yeah.
Like he's like speaking in the whatever weird language it was.
Yeah.
Like Sumerian, is that what it was? Or
yeah, it was Sumerian. So the tape reader is reading off sections from this book that end up resurrecting some sort of ancient Sumerian demon out in the woods. So Cheryl ends up becoming severely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And she basically...
There's like a tree like breaking windows and stuff too. And like screaming as well.
And so she asks...
that's how the tape always starts. But then there's running and screaming.
And so she ends up demanding that the tape gets shut off. And then everyone just kind of separates into their own groups. Cheryl's by herself. Scotty and Shelly are together. And Ash and Linda are together. And it was at this point where I had my first ad break. Because I watched it on the strangest streaming service I've ever found in my life, Tubi TV.
Tubi TV.
They had ads, but there was not a lot of them, and they weren't very intrusive. So, on my first ad break, I got ads for Heineken beer, a Toyota pickup truck, eHarmony, and Taco Bell.
All I gotta say to that is Heineken, fuck that shit. Pabst Blue Ribbon. Anyway, that is funny though that you got ads on. I didn't watch it on a thing with ads, obviously, but I'll be curious to hear what other ads you got during this.
I wrote all of them down.
I find it hilarious that you actually wrote that down. There was one scene. It was kind of brief and not very consequential to the plot, but I thought the way it was edited and the camera work, I thought was kind of weird.
We might be thinking of the same scene.
It's the scene where what's her name? Ash's girlfriend.
Linda?
Linda, yeah, I think so. She's just staring at him.
Okay, yeah, it's that scene. So he basically has this necklace that he wants to give to her as a present. And the whole thing is shot, like, up close with their eyes. Like, Ash is pretending to be asleep. Linda keeps looking over, and it's just a close-up on their eyes for an uncomfortable amount of time.
I remember just watching that, and, like, it was so strangely unsettling and weird, and I was like, why is it shot like this?
It's so bizarre. It goes on for far too long.
And it's not even like they're, like, having a romantic, like make out or anything. They just he just gives her a fox, around a bit, basically.
Yeah,
that's it. We're moving on. I guess it's just to establish they have chemistry.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have come off better if they had better romantic chemistry in this.
Maybe, but I don't know. With the way it's shot, I don't feel like anyone could really make that work.
Christly.
And then
you get shots outside of something moving around and looking inside the windows, like something out of a Hitchcock movie.
And it ends up spotting Cheryl alone.
Yep. You also
get some speaking to her.
You also get some brief nudity in there as well.
You see Shelly.
Yep.
Taking off her shirt.
Yep. It's a horror movie. You know, that happens sometimes. That's not, surprisingly, that's not what got it the X rating.
And so the evil ends up calling out to Cheryl. I think it's saying, join us, I believe.
I should have written their fucking names down, because I just have, like, one of them goes outside or something.
And so Cheryl ends up going outside trying to track down the source of the noise when we get probably the most uncomfortable scene in the movie.
Oh, God.
So
I almost want to
out...
skip this part, actually. There's, like, something moving around through the trees, which...
Yeah.
Is it like a dryad or something? Like, what the fuck? And basically the tree branches wrap around her, they grab her and, like, tear at her clothes.
Yeah, and then she ends up getting raped by the trees.
Yeah.
Weirdly, so obviously the previous times I watched this movie, I didn't think about it because I hadn't seen Galaxy of Terror at that point. But the entire time I was watching that, I was reminded of the Galaxy of Terror scene when there's, like, the maggot.
That came out the same year, I think, 1981.
Really?
Yeah. So you can't really accuse one of ripping off the other. So.
Great minds think alike, apparently.
Oh my gosh, that was Roger Corman and James Cameron, so yeah.
Yeah. Great minds think alike.
Gosh. And also, I remember getting to this scene and just thinking...
It feels unnecessary.
Another fucking movie where we have to mention a rape. Like, Jesus. Yeah. Christ.
Hey, but this time it doesn't feature Kevin Spacey.
But this feels like somebody saw the tree scene in The Wizard of Oz and then had, like, a nightmare about it.
Yeah.
You know what scene I'm talking about, right? With the angry trees. Yeah.
It feels kind of out of place a little bit.
It is so out of place. Also, I'm going to assume these are not the trees that the Lorax claimed to speak for. But anyway, so yeah, this happens.
So she ends up...
The camera chases after her, basically.
Yep. She ends up escaping and running back to the cabin where she's like... She basically yells at Ash, like, you need to take me back to town. Real quick, this is where I got my next ad break.
Of course.
There was only...
Of course.
There was only 2 ads for this.
Okay.
So there was Instacart, where you could basically order, like, food and things online. And then there was Jenny Craig, which was a weight loss supplement.
I feel like we're gonna lose money on this episode because we'll have to pay all these all these.
They should be paying us. I'm giving them free ad revenue.
Oh my god! So Ash, he tries to drive her somewhere. I'm not really sure where they're gonna, like...
she wants to be driven back to, like, the nearest town that he can find.
But they're basically trapped.
Yeah, they actually love this scene. So they end up driving up to the bridge, and then Ash walks off. And the way it's shot is you see, like, the car basically head on, but then when Ash and later Cheryl end up walking, they're tilted at a pretty extreme angle, walking towards the camera. It's a really cool scene, and it helps like build kind of an eerie atmosphere with how it's shot. And then when you eventually see the bridge, it looks like it's actually curled up like a hand would be.
They don't really explain how, but I guess the rapist tree demons did it. And then Ash listens to the tape.
Yep.
For some why in Bob's name would you?
Well, he's not playing it out loud, so it's like not going to summon anything. He's wearing earbuds.
But still, why would you listen to it again?
I don't know. But he learns from there that the only way to kill the demons are to dismember them.
And meanwhile, some of the other people, I don't remember their names. I'm sorry.
Linda and Shelly.
They're like playing with cards, and then
yeah.
One of them starts naming them
Cheryl.
off.
Yeah, Cheryl, who was the one that got diddled by the trees, ends up like naming all of the cards correctly in order.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they're trying to they're doing that whole
like,
thing.
I
can
have
you guess
ESP.
what the next card is? Yeah, ESP.
Yeah.
That's right, ESP. Exactly what Peter Venkman does in the first Ghostbusters movie. Except no electroshock stuff.
Yeah. I actually also really love this scene, just with how the tone shifts so fast. Because it starts off as kind of humorous because I think it's Linda that's guessing.
She's guessing them all wrong.
Yeah, she's guessing them all wrong, but then Shelley is like, wow, you're getting all of them right. And then immediately, like, it's supposed to be kind of a joke.
This scene inspired Ghostbusters. That's exactly what happens in Ghostbusters. Except they added the electroshock stuff with the guy getting them wrong.
And then Cheryl ends up immediately saying the next one correctly, and then she keeps saying them all correctly, and so it quickly goes from this kind of jokey scene to very eerie very quickly. And so Cheryl ends up turning around and revealing that she has been possessed.
Yeah, she has like weird makeup on, which the makeup design is interesting. I can see some like influence from The Exorcist.
Yeah.
The first one at least. Nobody gives a damn about the sequels.
She ends up like pretending to collapse on the floor and then stabs Linda in the ankle with a pencil.
Yeah, which, oh my god.
That scene, it gets me every single time.
It's, very cringy.
Like, it's like, ugh.
Because it actually
there's a lot of blood in that scene too.
It looks like she's actually getting stabbed in the leg with a...
Yeah, it's painful to watch.
And they trap the possessed girl in the cellar.
Yep.
I should have written their names down. I'm sorry. They don't say their names too often, and they're not played by actors that I'm very familiar with, so you can understand why.
And so, something else to note, Ash gets thrown into a bookshelf that collapses on top of him.
Oh.
I'm mentioning that because it happens again later in the movie.
That must have been the Three Stooges influence right there. That feels like a Three Stooges gag right there.
Yeah.
Also, there's a weird effect that they did in this, which I thought was pretty cool, where they show the moon, and the moon blackens at one point, but not in the way the moon usually does. It like blackens like somebody's putting ink on it.
Yeah, it's a super cool shot.
I kind of want to know how they did that, because that's really interesting. It might have been my favorite like shot of the movie, actually, because it was so quick. It does happen again later in the movie, but like it was just such a small detail, but I thought it was really cool.
It was.
Which I think that's what another thing that sets this apart from other stuff of the genre, is just the weird little details that Sam Raimi added in to make it kind of quirky and off-kilter. And the camera, it shows the point of view of Linda. It's from the point of view of the cellar.
Oh yeah, so that'd be Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay. And she like does this weird laugh.
Yeah.
Which, this was another thing. I for some reason, I always forget this about these movies, is the creatures in these movies aren't zombies.
No, they're called deadites.
They're demons. Or deadite. But they're technically called deadites. They don't call them that in this movie,
No, I think it's Evil Dead 2 when they start calling them that.
But they're demons, they're not zombies. And even while writing these notes, I kept writing zombies because they look like zombies. I had to go back and change my notes because I wanted to get it right. And like I said, with all the possession stuff, you can definitely see the influence of The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Then we move on.
And so everyone's kind of
ends up breaking the window, which again, that's a shot like
it's a pretty cool shot.
That always makes me think of like Mel Brooks in High Anxiety. They have this gag of like it broke the window, but only because the cameraman was like too close to it. But yeah, and the camera's basically a character in the movie.
It is, And it's one of the best characters, too.
One of the best, yeah. Second best actor in this besides Bruce Campbell. What else has Richard D. Manningcore been in? I had to look up what Scotty's.
He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
And Scotty gets attacked in the bathroom by another possessed person.
Yep, by possessed Shelley.
Shelley, okay.
And actually, one thing that I do want to point out, so when he's going and looking for Shelley, one of the things that he does is go to like this closet that has a curtain over it and checks in there. So it feels like it's building towards a jump scare that never happens. They do that again later in the film with the same closet. And also, when he looks in that bathtub, that's a disgusting bathtub.
I don't remember what was in the bathtub again.
It was just like grimy. Like a really dirty bathtub.
That's right, yeah, it was. I just remember, yeah, that's... I guess it's just kind of a sort of an abandoned house. Nobody has bothered to clean it, so...
Yeah. He ends up pushing her into the fireplace. And so she catches on fire, but it doesn't kill her.
Okay. And then Scotty cuts her hand, which this part was disgusting. She chews her own hand off.
Yeah, it's such a good effect.
Yuck. Like, that's like, there's like 2 moments in the movie, like, well, there's another one later, but like those were probably the 2 grossest moments where the pencil in the leg.
Pencil, and then when she chews her hand off.
That's disgusting.
And so she ends up
getting stabbed. I do underestimate how gory this movie is.
Yeah, it is a very gory film.
I guess I'm comparing it too much to like Dead Alive and stuff like that.
And also, during this scene where they're fighting Shelley, Shelley ends up throwing Ash into another bookshelf.
A bookshelf, yeah.
And so eventually Scotty ends up stabbing her in the back with the dagger. And then they have to dismember her to make sure that she stays dead.
Yep, and then the demon dies. Or not. It gets up and attacks again.
Yeah.
Surprise! Also, this was the scene I noticed something during the scene. Ash's character, he's a lot more cowardly in this.
Yeah, he's standing in the corner not doing anything.
He is just terrified. Like, instead of using the axe that he's holding to attack the Deadites, he hands it to Scotty to do it himself.
Yeah. And I actually wrote something down here. I put, Scotty feels like he's being built up as the main character.
He kind of is, yeah. He's getting more screen time during the beginning of the movie than Ash.
Yeah.
And then there was another cool effect where the lens turned red with blood.
Oh, yeah,
as he's like cutting up the demon with the axe, you know. And then they carry her outside in a blanket to bury her. And
which
Scotty,
they dig that grave really fast.
Something I noticed is Ash basically buries every single one of his friends in this movie.
Yeah.
He's the one that, like, fuck, man.
Guess what time it is?
What?
Ad time.
Another ad, okay.
Yep, alright. So, this ad break, I got an ad for Chevy Truck Month. Then the next ad was for Good RX. It's like you get discounts on prescription medication.
I love how I haven't even heard of most of the stuff that you're getting ads for, apparently.
Then the next thing was Credit Karma. And my final ad was a return of a fan favorite, the Taco Bell ad.
They really are pushing that Taco Bell, huh? And then Scotty, he's gonna leave them to die.
Yeah.
He says he's getting out of there, basically leaving Ash and his girlfriend to die in the house. What an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, Christ. Yeah, your leading man is a dick, apparently. That was probably the moment where people realized, wait, Scotty's the one that's gonna die now.
Yeah.
Because that's just how it happens in these movies. You betray your friends, you get axed.
Yeah.
Literally.
And so Scotty disappears for a little while and then comes right back in, completely bloodied and like basically torn to shreds, almost.
And then the movie ends.
Because our main character died. So he ends up basically warning Ash that the trees will not allow anyone to escape alive. And so Ash then goes to check in on Linda, and we get a pretty cool special effect. We end up seeing her ankle, and it looks like an infection spreads like super quick.
That's right, yeah. And I noticed that special effect, like the blood, the way it was like, the pattern of it sort of looked like the pattern of Spider-Man's costume a little bit. And I think they painted it on.
Yeah, it looks like it was painted.
Oh, yeah, it's an interesting effect, but it also shows it's a low-budget movie, too,
And so, at first, the Linda Deadite isn't really doing much except just laughing at Ash.
They have these weird laughs.
Yeah.
Like, why do demons in movies always have just the weirdest laughs?
And this is honestly one of my favorite scenes. She's just sitting there on the floor, laughing, and Ash just keeps slapping her in the face.
The scene was hilarious, yeah. And kind of creepy, too, because, like, the demons, like, keeps repeating some of what Scotty said to, like, mock him.
Yeah.
Not only are these demons evil, they're also annoying. I would have laughed if they just went in the direction of having the two demons annoying Ash to death,
I mean, that's basically what happens because, Linda keeps laughing while Cheryl's, like, jiggling the lock on the trap door.
Well, that's what they try to do, but... Anyway. Ash, he pulls out a shotgun, his boomstick.
It's not the boomstick yet. This shotgun only had one barrel. The boomstick has two.
I wish he'd called it his boomstick in this one, but unfortunately we had to wait till Army of Darkness for that to happen.
Yeah, his boomstick is a double-barreled Remington, S-Mart's top of the line.
You even know, like, the type of gun it is. Wow, that's funny.
You can find it in the sporting goods section.
Did you get a sporting goods ad on there too? Is that how you know this? That would have been so fun. And basically, the demons, they start acting like they're back to normal.
Yep. To try and trick Ash.
Try to get him to let his guard down, basically. And the one in the cellar... I'm sorry I don't remember what their names are, but she gets... Cheryl, she gets a good jump scare where the hands, like, try pulling him down there.
Yeah.
That was one part that got me, actually. And he pulls his girlfriend outside and then basically just leaves her out there as the moon does that weird effect again. Where it looks like the ink's on. And there's also another thing I noticed is Ash has this kind of childlike innocence to him in this movie.
He kind of does. He's trying not to really hurt anyone, and he also has no idea what's happening.
It seemed like they were kind of going for, like, he's, like, the innocent in all of this.
Yeah.
He's, like, the wholesome one of the five. And it's almost, the way I think of it is, it's almost like this traumatic event basically just turned him into the character he is in the next two.
Yeah.
Sort of like...
completely psychotic.
And maybe his wholesomeness also made him just less easy to corrupt into a demon, because he's the only one that doesn't get turned into one.
Yeah.
I was just noticing, this is a horror movie. It's basically just this guy slowly losing all of his friends and finding it difficult to cope with it.
Yeah.
And it kept reminding me of the first Mad Max movie, because that's basically the arc Max goes through in the first Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
He goes through this horrible, traumatic event, all his loved ones get killed, and then he becomes this no shits given, like, badass in the next two, basically.
Anyway, so eventually Linda and Ash do end up having a fight where Ash stabs her with the dagger, seemingly killing her.
Getting impaled, and she's, like, spitting out, like, milk and blood.
Oh yeah,
which
all over Ash's face.
Yeah, oh my god, that's right. Yeah, he gets stuff.
Ash gets drenched in this movie.
He gets so much stuff spat on his face in this movie. Like, poor guy. Like, and he goes to get out a chainsaw, but
he can't. He can't do it. He can't cut up his girlfriend.
And the acting here was really good, where he's like crying,
yeah,
and stuff. You know, like, because Bruce Campbell's acting is actually pretty good. You know,
yeah, especially compared to the other actors.
Especially, yeah. You can see why he became more of a star than they did.
Yeah.
I guess he's kind of. I guess he is kind of more of a character actor, but
yeah. So he ends up not being able to dismember her, and instead just goes to bury her directly. And so Linda ends up getting back up and trying to attack Ash again, but he uses a nearby shovel to decapitate her.
Yeah, that was a good effect there.
Yeah.
Like, and more blood sprays on his face. I bet he's regretting his life decisions right around here. I mean, like, what has led him to this point?
Because, like, her body falls on him, and then, like, the neck is pointed directly at his face, and it's just gushing blood at him. And so Ash comes back inside, and surprise, Cheryl's gone. The trap door is open.
Also, this is about where I was noticing that these demons actually have another weakness. Doors.
Yeah, because the evil, when it's chasing Cheryl through the woods earlier, as soon as Ash closes and locks the door, it just, like, kind of makes an annoyed noise and then goes elsewhere.
They're like the aliens in Signs. Their only weaknesses are, like, getting, like, trapped behind doors and water. I mean, getting their heads cut off in this one. But
hey, guess what time it is? Ad time.
Ad time.
Alright, so my next ad was for Zales Jewelry. It's like some jewelry store.
Oh, really? I never would have guessed from the name.
Then the next thing was it was like a pill that you took, or like a supplement to prevent HPV-related cancers. Then the next commercial was for a TV show called Welcome to Flatch. I've never heard of it before.
Is he the king of the impossible?
Then I got another Chevy Truck Month ad, and then it ended with an Audible ad. And I believe that was the last ad break. That was the last ad break of the movie. So number one spot was tied between Taco Bell and Chevy.
You actually wrote, like, your favorite ads were the...
Well, that was the number of times that they appeared.
Maybe they want you to get Taco Bell Chevys or something.
Anyway, Ash then decides he's going to go back down to the cellar to try and find
Shells for the shotgun.
Yep. And we get one of the trippiest scenes in this movie.
This was a weird scene, through. Yeah. There's, like, blood leaking out of the pipes.
Yeah, out of the pipes, out of the electric socket into light bulbs. Then there's a projector where blood starts, like, pouring down the lens.
Yeah.
I think one of the pipes breaks and points directly at Ash's face, spilling even more blood onto him. Because the poor guy hasn't been covered in enough blood yet.
Yeah, basically, blood, your blood, Lance's blood. Ever seen blood? If not, this is what it looks like.
And so he ends up going back upstairs trying to find Cheryl, and we get the second time someone checks out that closet with a curtain trying to find a deadite. And this time, Cheryl ends up jumping through the window trying to attack Ash before he ends up, putting a shotgun blast to its jaw.
There was also another part where, like, the camera's, like, racing towards him, but it gets stopped by the door, It's like window shutters moving. Basically, the house is possessed.
Yeah.
I hate when that happens.
Man, I just remembered that Monster House movie. That's a weird movie.
That is a weird movie, yeah. Steve Buscemi's in that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Plays the neighbor.
Yeah.
Mr. Oh, he had some weird name, but I don't remember. Nevercracker. There was another trippy moment where he like looks in a mirror.
Oh, I love that scene.
And the reflection becomes water when he like touches it.
Yeah, he like sticks his hand in it and then freaks out.
That was so weird, and
I love that scene.
also, actually, that's a pretty good special effect too.
It is really good.
They didn't really have much money, but that actually looks good. You know,
It looks fantastic. And that mirror does come back in the second movie too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does the mirror become like a main character or something?
Well, because what happened... So, I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't remember the exact line, but Ash looks into the mirror, and he's like, I'm okay. Everything's fine. And then the reflection talks back to him. He's like, you're not okay. You just cut up your girlfriend with a chainsaw.
Like his own reflection
Anyway.
is like talking back to him.
Yeah.
That's funny, yeah.
And so Ash starts trying to barricade.
I'm really excited to watch the next one.
Oh yeah, I almost watched the second one right after I finished the first one. I was in the mood for it.
I would have, but it was like getting really late.
Yeah,
I haven't rewatched them yet, but you know. And that's the thing. I want to figure out: do I like Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness more when I watch them again?
Ash ends up trying to barricade the house so that nothing gets in. But while this is happening, Scotty comes back to life as a Deadite and attacks Ash. And in their sort of scuffle, the Notaron Demento ends up falling, and a piece of it ends up landing in the fire.
There were also a lot of like really quiet moments I noticed.
Yeah, it kind of takes a second to breathe a little bit.
I was noticing like some silent film influence on this, you know, just lots of scene of like nobody talking, just letting the visuals speak for themselves. And then you remember that this is a sound film because the demons show up again and very loudly attack.
Yeah.
He sees the book on the ground near the fireplace and goes to grab it.
Suddenly, Cheryl comes back in.
Yeah, basically just all of the demons are just attacking him while he's trying to use the necklace to grab the book.
Yep.
And one of the demons is like hitting him with like a pole or a
yeah, it was like a stick.
Poker.
Oh yeah, they took the fireplace rod and started beating him with it.
Oh my gosh.
Not even stabbing him, not like putting it in the fire and burning him. No, just whacking him with it.
I guess the demons aren't very smart. And then he just throws the book into the fire.
And we get a pretty cool scene of the two Deadites basically freezing in place, then decomposing.
The demons, they start rapidly decomposing with some interesting stop motion effects.
Yep.
Which I think were done with clay.
For the most part, it looks good. There's a couple of ones, I think specifically with Scotty's corpse, that kind of look a little off. But for the most part, it looks pretty good.
It doesn't really look very real, to be honest. But it's an interesting effect, though. I kind of like it.
And then, like,
it's
arms
also gross, too. Cause,
like, it's very gross. There's, like, cockroaches coming out of them.
It looks like there's, like, uncooked cornbread leaking out of one of them. Claws burst out. Like, for fuck's sake, when are these things going to die?
And so, after, like, these arms
and poor
come
Ash,
out
he gets sprayed with blood again in this scene.
Thankfully, for Ash, it's the last time it happens in this movie. God.
Finally killed all of them. And there's one part, this is another camera shot I thought was really cool, but he just stands up and looks around while the music's playing and the sun's coming up.
Yeah.
The dude, he's just had the worst night of his entire life.
And there's finally hope again.
He has, some peace. And there was something strangely wholesome about this moment when he leaves the cabin. Like, it looked more like something out, like some shot out, like Old Yeller or something.
Yeah.
Minus the blood, obviously, but...
And then it's all ripped away from him.
Yeah, just when you think everything goes okay, the camera kills him.
Yeah, so we see the evil go through the woods, break into the house, and come out, and then directly attack Ash, and then the movie ends.
About the last shot. That shot has been ripped off so many times.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a great shot.
It's great the first time, but when they do it over and over again, it's kind of just like, but it is, in the context of this movie, it works.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. Okay, if the 2 other movies hadn't been made, Ash basically dies here.
Yeah, it's basically a movie where no one survives.
Like, I can imagine people who saw this the first time, they probably were like, oh, God.
It's probably why Stephen King loved it so much.
I am never going to rent a cabin ever again. It's not one of my favorite horror movies, but it's enjoyable. Definitely go in with the expectations that it's a low-budget movie, But that being said, I do think it transcends its budget a bit thanks to the editing and especially the camera work. It's well-paced, there's style to it. You can tell there was a bit more thought put into it than, hey, let's just set the camera up over here and hope that maybe
something interesting happens.
And maybe it'll pick up the sound and what's going on,
For me, I'm going to make a pretty bold claim here, all right?
Oh. What's the bold claim?
I think out of all the movies that we've covered on the podcast so far, this is my favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah, I was surprised by how much I loved this movie rewatching it.
Let me see what else we did on the podcast. We did Star Wars.
Yep.
We did all the... You like it more than all the Star Wars
movies? I do.
More than The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
More than Alien.
Yeah.
And Aliens?
Yeah.
More than The Road Warrior.
Yeah.
More than any of the Superman movies.
Yes.
Really? You think this is better than Superman 4? That's surprising.
Believe it or not, I do.
I also assume you like it more than Batman Forever. I mean...
yes.
That's a given, yeah.
It might have been a combination of just, the circumstances under which I watched it. Maybe it had something to do with the alcohol I had that night, but I loved this movie when I watched it.
Was it the ads, too? Did that add
the enjoyment? The ads completed the experience.
Christ. That's interesting.
I think it's my favorite movie so far that we've covered.
Or just of all time. It's just your favorite movie of all time. I think once you said Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, no, I still think Shawshank is like my favorite movie.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't like this movie as much as being there, but don't get me wrong, I enjoy the movie. I don't enjoy it as much as you do, obviously. And was it also just the fact this was just the first horror movie you ever saw? Is that what adds to the enjoyment of it?
It might, but because the previous few times, so the first time that I watched this movie was on my school laptop. So, like a small screen, it was like 10 a.m. I had earbuds in. The second time I watched it was with a group of friends. What we had done is I went and checked out a projector from the library. And then we basically had a speaker system that we got hooked up and essentially made just a small movie theater. And so, that was a great experience. But, I was with other people. So, people were kind of talking during it every now and again. This time, I had watched it by myself on my TV with my sound system hooked up. Mostly in the dark except for my desk lamp. And I don't know, just watching it under those conditions, it felt perfect.
Those are good conditions, yeah.
Actually, that projector setup, that we watched the entire Friday the 13th series using that same method.
The whole series?
Yeah, we watched all 12 movies in the span of like a month using the projector and a sound system that we had.
This does catch me off guard a little bit, considering the competition of what else we've done on this podcast.
I was honestly surprised. Like when I finished it, I was like, that was really good.
It is one of the shorter movies we've done.
I definitely think the pacing helps, because that is one thing that kind of killed the Dark Knight movies for me. Was just they're so long and the pacing was kind of slow.
I take it you like this more than Beyond Thunderdome, obviously.
Yes.
I know you have criticized some of the movies on this podcast for like pacing, like Superman Returns. I know you.
Oh yeah, Superman Returns was a bit of a slog at the beginning.
I probably liked Superman Returns more than you did, because I don't know. I guess I'm more used to slower pacing and stuff, especially after watching like Antonioni movies like Christ. But surely you don't think this is better than Batman and Robin?
The only way the Evil Dead could have been even better is if they had Arnold making ice puns throughout it.
To be honest, that actually would have been pretty entertaining. Having that,
we need to make a cut of that.
The
adding scenes from adding scenes from Batman and Robin into the Evil Dead.
Don't even like try and make it make sense. Just have it like Ash is like just attacking one of them with like an axe, and then just cut to Mr. Freeze saying "Cool party," give it the thumbs up. Yeah. I am curious on what you'll think of the next two, because this is...
I am also very curious.
Because I like the other two more than this one, at least from what I remember. They're very different in tone, though, to be fair.
Yeah, completely different.
Because this one's just a straight-up horror movie. And the plot is, for lack of a better term, unoriginal. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty bare bones.
The characters, aside from Ash, aren't very distinguishable, and there's not as many catchphrases in this as there are in the later movies. I think I only wrote down 2 lines or something in this whole movie. That being, I have more problems with this movie than you do, obviously.
Yeah,
but. I mean, so, the other characters aren't all that great, but Bruce Campbell, he's very good in it.
Yeah, he's really good in this one.
I forgot how somber he was in this one.
Definitely a far cry from the wisecracking, badass that he is.
There were some moments where I was getting a bit of existential dread, just realizing this dude just lost all of his friends on the same night.
Yeah, and he had to bury 2 of them. He decapitated one of them.
He's going to have to deal with that the rest of his life now.
That's actually something in Ash vs. Evil Dead that they bring up. He ends up going back to his hometown, where he was basically shunned because, he comes back home. None of his friends are there, and so they all basically... he never went to trial or anything, but they all basically accused him of murdering his friends in the woods, and so he was ostracized afterwards.
He didn't kill his friends in the woods. That was Jason. Despite the problems and the limitations of this, I think Bruce. What lifts this above other films of that genre is obviously Bruce Campbell.
Yep.
And just the strange choices that Sam Raimi made here. The camera work in this is so eccentric and just. And it gets more eccentric with his other movies. We've both seen tons of other Sam Raimi movies. I don't know if I've seen all of them, but I've seen enough of them that I know, Darkman especially gets weird with the camera work and stuff and the editing, but it's just those weird idiosyncrasies that I think put it above other films of the genre. Otherwise it would just be just some other demon possession in the woods flick,
I do think that this is still probably the best horror film that I've seen.
That was another thing I was going to ask. This is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Yes.
I can understand it cuts things down to the basics and stuff, but still has room for style points. So, and the other two movies aren't really horror movies.
No, not at all.
Evil Dead 2 is basically a horror comedy, and then Army of Darkness is just comedy. Medieval comedy with evil skeletons and stuff. And witches. I think there's like a witch in that movie too.
Yeah, she's basically a deadite though.
Okay, whatever. It's been a long time since I've seen it, to be fair. There's also just little hints of dark humor in this one. It's not as pronounced as in the later entries, but they're there, with the blood leaking into the light bulb. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be funny or not. I've always found that little detail so peculiar. I wasn't sure what it was. It's such a strange image, and I think they repeat it in the second movie too.
They do. Because actually, when it happened in this movie, my first thought was, didn't this happen in Evil Dead 2?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because you saw the other ones before you saw this one.
Yeah.
Which that might be another thing, is I saw the sequels before I saw this one. So maybe I'd have enjoyed it more if I hadn't. Kind of the same with the Star Wars movies. I actually like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi more than the first Star Wars movie, because I saw those ones before I saw the original one. Yeah. So by the time I saw the original one, I was like, why the hell is so much of this in the desert? And where's Yoda? Like, I was just, I have more of an appreciation for it now than when I was a kid, but, it was really jarring, Your favorite movie of all the movies on this podcast, this is the one. Yeah. That is very interesting. I don't even know where I would place it, because if I list off the number of movies I liked on this podcast more than this one, it would be Batman Returns, the first 3 Star Wars movies. Revenge of the Sith, I would say I like more than this. For the first 2 Alien movies, I would say I like more than this. Mad Max, I liked more than this. The Road Warrior, I liked more than this. Fury Road, I liked.
You liked the original Mad Max more than this?
I like the first Mad Max movie. Might actually be my favorite Mad Max movie, believe it or not.
Really?
Because it's such a weird movie and has such a weird tone. And I like Toe Cutter as the villain. I think that might be why. I think that might be what pushes it over. But I like Fury Road more than this. I liked Superman. I liked more. Superman 2 I definitely liked more, because that was my favorite Superman. It is better than Superman 3, I'll give it that. And I liked Superman 3, but I will say Evil Dead is a better pace than Superman 3.
Yeah.
And better pace than Superman Returns. I don't like it as much as The Dark Knight or Batman Begins, either.
What about Max Headroom?
It's better than that, definitely. It's way better than that. The Max Headroom one, I was kind of bored during.
Yeah.
Because Max Headroom wasn't really in it, and I was just... It wasn't weird enough either. I was hoping it would be weirder. But yeah, I think I just named off like more than 10 movies, so I guess this wouldn't even be my top 10 favorite movies on this podcast. That is... that is very interesting.
Yes, it is surprising.
Okay, trivia. Like I said, Stephen King was a huge fan of this movie. He called it one of his favorite horror films, and thanks to his endorsement, New Line Cinema attained the distribution rights for it. And of course, also VHS sales probably helped with, getting it a cult size. A lot of horror movies in the 80s did, actually. People would just be like, what the hell is this? This cover looks weird. Let's go rent this. It's even scary. And I think it also might have been listed as one of the video nasties, too.
Really?
There was that whole movement in, like, Britain where they were trying to, like, ban horror films.
Yeah.
and I think this might have been one of them.
I can see it.
And like we mentioned, the original title was Book of the Dead, but the distributors thought it was a boring title. They're like, oh, teenagers aren't going to get that, literary reference.
I do feel like The Evil Dead is just a better title, though.
It's a more memorable title, that's for sure. And Book of the Dead might give, like, Egyptian, mythology, like, vibes to it. You're not gonna like, what I found next, some of the critical reception of this movie.
Oh boy.
Especially since
is my best friend among those critics?
Yeah, but
Batman Forever is the best Batman movie.
I couldn't find Pat Collins' review of it, but yes, I was able to find Larry Malton's review of it. I'll just start with him first, since you mentioned him. He gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars.
Oh, come on! You can't rate it lower than Batman Forever.
Do you want me to pull up that list of movies he gave, like, a lower...
I think I just want to experience his ratings as they happen.
Okay. He called it one of the grossest horror films ever, and said it was deliriously imaginative roller coaster ride for those with strong stomachs. Also noticed he got the year that this came out wrong.
Really?
He said, for some reason, his movie guide says it came out in 1983.
Huh.
Gene Siskel wasn't a fan of it either.
Really?
Although, granted, he didn't seem to like a whole ton of horror films. So you could make
Ebert have an opinion?
You could make an enormous list of horror movies he didn't like. He found it repetitive. Roger Ebert apparently didn't like it either, although he did appreciate that it cut things down to the basics. So he liked it more than Siskel did. But maybe not by much. And I watched a making of documentary about it just to see if I could find a ton of tidbits. Apparently, they were getting hit by actual 2x4s.
Really?
And it was cold outside. Christ. The original script called for the characters to be smoking marijuana when they are first listening to the tape. The actors decided to try this for real, and the entire scene had to be later reshot due to their uncontrollable behavior. No weed references in the actual movie, so...
Yeah, that is interesting, that it was just completely cut.
The cabin used as the film's set was also lodging for the 13 crew members. Oh wow, only 13 crew members.
Wow.
Damn. Several people had to sleep in the same room. Living conditions were terrible, and the crew frequently argued. The cabin didn't have plumbing, so the actors went days without showering and felt ill frequently in the freezing weather. By the end of production, they were burning furniture to stay warm. God damn.
Yeah, that just sounds unpleasant overall.
This is why you don't film movies in the middle of nowhere in some cabin. And also why you just generally don't go to a cabin in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You'll probably get stalked and killed by who even knows. I mean, depending on which horror movie you're watching, it could be anything. At the end of principal shooting in Tennessee, the crew put together a little time capsule package and buried it inside the fireplace of the cabin as a memento of the production to whomever found it. The cabin has since been destroyed, and only the fireplace is still intact.
Huh.
I wonder what's in the time capsule.
Probably photos of the set and like behind the scenes stuff.
The hand of the demon that they cut off. The pencil with the blood on it, maybe.
That would be the best thing that you could put in that time capsule.
Yeah.
Imagine stumbling across that and not knowing what the Evil Dead was. You'd be very concerned.
Yeah, you'd probably go to the police or something. I think somebody got murdered here. Andy Granger, a friend of Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi, gave them this advice. Fellas, no matter what you do, keep the blood running down the screen. They included the scene in the finished film where the blood runs down the projector screen as a tribute to him.
Huh.
That's very kind of them.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell put up his family's property in northern Michigan as collateral so that Sam Raimi not only could finish the film, but also could blow it up to 35mm film, which was required for a theatrical release. Raimi was so grateful for his financial contribution, he credited him as co-producer.
Huh.
It happens sometimes, you're making a low-budget film, you gotta mortgage your house or some crazy stuff. I mean,
like when Terminator.
Yeah, James Cameron did that.
He told a story where he had 2-for-1 deals on McDonald's cheeseburgers. And so he'd get that, eat half a burger one day, then eat the rest of it the next day, and then he'd have another burger from the buy one, get one free.
You would never want to go to McDonald's again if you did.
No. Especially not after eating a cold McDonald's hamburger.
You might have had a microwave.
True, but do you really want to microwave McDonald's?
Also true. At the end of a normal day of shooting, Bruce Campbell would return home in the back of a pickup truck because he was covered in fake blood from head to toe. Imagine just trying to go into a bar, order a drink, and they're like...
Yeah, everyone would be very concerned.
Buddy, are you okay? I've heard about that happening before. I can't remember the movie.
I've heard of something similar. I also don't remember the movie, but someone injured themselves on set, but they were covered with fake blood and fake wounds. And the doctors were looking at all the fake wounds.
It was some actor that was in I think it was a horror movie or science fiction movie where they were just in a bunch of makeup.
Yeah.
And they were just walking by somebody and people were just really, I cannot remember which movie it was though. The blood is a combination of syrup, non-dairy creamer, and red food coloring. At one point, Bruce Campbell's shirt that he wears in the film was so saturated with fake blood that after drying it by fire, the shirt became solidified and broke when he tried to put it on.
Huh. Yeah, that would be a setback.
Gotta go buy Bruce Campbell another shirt. I wonder if you can notice, in the movie, that he's wearing a different shirt. They couldn't find a shirt that looked the same, so they had... I don't know if that actually happens in the movie, but... Because I don't tend to pick up on stuff like that, but... Mm-hmm. The cabin was located in the forest outside the small town of Morristown, Tennessee. Bruce Campbell's biography, he says that it was later burned down. No one knows for sure what happened. Sam Raimi says that he burnt it down himself after filming. Additionally, no one will give out complete directions to the cabin because the only remaining part of the structure is the brick chimney and too many people have already vandalized the property. After completing principal photography in the winter of 1979 to 1980, most of the actors left the production. However, there was still much of the film to be completed. Most of the second half of the film features Bruce Campbell and various stand-ins, credited as fake shemps, to replace the actors who left.
It sounds like Bruce was pretty involved with the movie, the whole way through.
Imagine, he had to fight other versions of himself. He does that in Army of Darkness as well, but
yeah,
we'll get to that later. When there wasn't any filming, Bruce Campbell would actually help out the crew in prepping shots and props around the set. So, oh wow, he really was a collaborator in this. There were some countries that tried banning this movie, blah, 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 blah. Oh, here we go. At the premiere screenings of The Evil Dead, blood donor stations were giving free tickets to the movie, along with pin badges stating, "I bled for The Evil Dead" to blood donors.
That's actually pretty clever.
Robert Tapert, one of the producers, joked in an interview that this was their way of giving blood back to the community after so much fake blood was used when filming. That seems more like something William Castle would have done.
Yeah.
Like one of his movies. I don't know if you've heard about some of the gimmicks his movies would have.
I don't know if I've heard of William Castle.
He did House on Haunted Hill. He did The Tingler.
Oh, he was the producer for Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, Rosemary's Baby. He might have even acted in that, actually, now that I think about it. But House on Haunted Hill, there's that scene where the skeleton attacks that one woman.
Yeah.
When they were showing it in the theater, they would have a skeleton on like a rope or something, and they would just push it out into the audience at that part of the movie.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. There's some pretty funny ones. The Tingler is one of the funnier ones where, like, because the whole thing with that movie is the creature, like, makes people's, like, backs tingle. So he had, like, some of the chairs in the audience, like, equipped with these, like, vibrating devices. So it would seem like the Tingler was attached to them. And one of the things in that movie is in order to get the Tingler off, you have to scream really loudly. So, like, you would just have audience members just screaming during the movie because they think the Tingler, like, got out. Because there's, like, one part out in the movie where Vincent Price, like, says, oh, the Tingler is, like, in the theater that you're in right now. You know, they basically break the fourth wall. I would have loved to have gone to, like, the
that
theater
would have been great
to see this shit happen. This movie's just had all these just ridiculous gimmicks. You know, those are probably the two funniest. Well, two of the funnier ones. Filmed in Abraham Lincoln's real log cabin. No, I'm kidding. That he built with his own hands when he was born. The eerie wind noise in the movie was recorded by Sam Raimi. He first heard it through his bedroom window while he was trying to sleep and thought it would be perfect for the movie.
I've actually done things like that before. Like, my recording app on my iPhone is just full of, like, these random noises that I hear that I'm like, that sounds eerie.
I know I would sometimes, like, when I would hear owls at night, I would just open my window and stick the phone out there and, like, record some of the, like, noises that we're making and stuff. There was, like, one night where there were two owls it was like they were in a shouting match with each other or something. It was really funny. But yeah, maybe I should do that more. I think Ben Burtt also did stuff like that for, like, the Star Wars movies. He would just record weird sounds.
I mean, there's a lot of sound effects in those movies, so.
And also just archive, like, sound recordings. Like the Wilhelm scream, that was in, like, some old Western movie with Gary Cooper. And I think that spy character, if I remember right, his audio was basically slowed down audio of John Wayne.
John Wayne?
Yeah. So John Wayne is technically in Star Wars. Hey, it makes more sense than casting John Wayne as Genghis Khan. In case you're wondering, we're probably not doing that on the podcast.
Darn. I was hoping to squeeze it in between and Cannibal Holocaust.
But I would be open to doing The Conqueror, but only as, like, if we're doing an episode just on Howard Hughes. The film's first cut ran at around 117 minutes, which Bruce Campbell called an impressive achievement in light of the 65-minute length of the screenplay. It was then edited down to a more marketable 85 minutes. The original version would focus on the terror that is present, but also the tragedy of Ash slowly losing his friends and his guilt for not being able to save them, which you do see hints of that in the movie.
Yeah. So that would be interested to see the longer version of the movie.
It probably doesn't exist, though, now. I mean, they usually back then, they usually just threw out the deleted stuff. The opening sequence of the evil moving over the pond was achieved by having Bruce Campbell push Sam Raimi in a dinghy whilst he filmed the shots. That makes that shot a little bit less scary.
Yeah. This movie also marks the first appearance of Sam Raimi's Oldsmobile.
What other movies does the Oldsmobile appear in?
It's in like every Sam Raimi movie. It was Aunt May's car in the Spider-Man films.
Oh wow.
What else?
Was it in Darkman?
It probably was.
I know you haven't seen Darkman, but I was just curious.
It was Annie's car in The Gift. It was Miss Ganosha's car in Dragging Me to Hell.
That's a weird movie there, Drag Me to Hell.
Mm.
Have you seen that one?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
It's an interesting one. Definitely a Sam Raimi movie. The cabin did not actually have a cellar.
I knew about this one.
Most of the cellar scenes were filmed in the stone cellar of a farmhouse owned by producer Rob Tapert's family in Marshall, Michigan. The last room of the cellar was actually Sam Raimi's garage.
Huh.
The hanging gourds and bones are a tribute to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Huh.
For the scene where the students descend into the cellar, a hole was cut into the floor, a shallow pit was dug, and a ladder was placed into the pit. Like I said, really good editing, because I didn't notice this.
It's seamless.
It's seamless, yeah. And also good camera work, because they didn't, like, expose, like, oh, there's the roof of the garage right there, or whatever. It's like in fucking, oh, damn it, I wish... what was the name of that movie with Nicolas Cage? Deadfall. Right. That's what it was called. Deadfall.
Okay.
Awful movie. And part of why is because sometimes you'll see the camera placement is so bad you can see that they're clearly just filming on a set because you can see the end of like the top of the set.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. The only thing... Okay, I will say this about that movie. If you want to see Nicolas Cage going really over the top, then there's your movie. Because he is just... He's going, like, full-on Nicolas Cage in that movie. But everything else about it sucks. So bad, I couldn't even remember the name of it. But they didn't do that in this movie. That's, again... Good camera placement changes a lot.
Sam Raimi is just really good when it comes to the camera work.
He is, yeah. And with the editing too, as well.
Yeah.
Like we see in Darkman and the Spider-Man movies.
Alright.
On the very first day of shooting, during a scene shot on a bridge, the crew got lost in the woods. Oh my god, that would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that was Evil Dead.
How many... Wait. I need to figure this out. I'm counting the number of movies on this podcast that I liked more than this one, just to see kind of where the placement would be. 5, 6. It wouldn't even be in like the top 15. Christ. It'd be like 16 or 17, probably.
So for you, it's like in the middle of all the movies we watched.
Because I would probably give it, like, if I was giving it, like, an out of 10 rating, I'd probably give it, like, a 7 or an 8. I mean, I like it, but...
I personally loved it.
I mean, you'd probably give it, like, a 12 or something out of 10.
Yeah, I honestly think I'd give it a 10.
I don't really give out star ratings on on these, but... Just because it could change at some point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Hell, I've had moments where I've changed whether I even like a movie or not. Just because, you know, sometimes I'm in a bad mood while watching a movie, and I don't like it, or I'm in a really good mood, and I, you know, just...
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much my mood affects whether I enjoy something. But I was in a pretty good mood while watching this, though. You know. until the jump scares. But I like it. I think it's a good movie. But I guess I'm still I'm surprised that of the movies we've done on this podcast, this is the one that you're really ahead of The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, I honestly absolutely love this movie.
You like the Deadites more than Darth Vader, and
Alright, so I think that's all that we have.
admit it, Bruce Campbell isn't quite as charismatic as Lando.
True. Not in this one, at least.
I don't really know what much else to say.
I think that's basically all that we have.
I'm glad there isn't any tree rape in the next two.
True. That is a definite improvement that the others make.
Wait. So, tree rape wins over Yoda.
Tree rape does take the movie down a notch, but it's not enough. It's still top movie.
It's such a weird, out of place scene too, and they just never call back to it.
It is.
I think I mentioned about the music's pretty good in this movie.
Yeah,
that's something I don't know if I praised. It was.
I think that we talked about it at like the very beginning.
It's not like the most like iconic, horror movie score. I mean, Halloween's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah.
John Carpenter. Or Jaws. I mean, that's some pretty iconic music.
Yeah.
But it's a good score. I think part of it, I think the reason why it's not quite like a 10 or something is I don't know. I'm always like, when I watch a movie, I want to be really invested in the characters and stuff. And I like Bruce Campbell, but he's not quite full Bruce Campbell yet. So
yeah.
But it's an interesting movie.
It definitely set like a precedent for horror movies.
I do appreciate, I understand how important this movie is, the stuff it influenced.
Yeah.
Like Edgar Wright's a huge fan of it, for example. Stephen King, obviously, we mentioned. But I don't know. I guess there's other horror movies I like more than this one. And it's apparently your favorite horror movie, which I'm not gonna make fun of you for that. I'm just it caught me off guard. I'm sorry. It kind of caught me off guard. I was surprised.
I figured that would be a bit of a surprise. Anyway, so that was Evil Dead.
I guess, yeah. It started off. It kicked off the Evil Dead franchise, and also tons of horror ripoffs like Cabin Fever or Cabin in the Woods. I'm sorry. I can't get. I don't like those two movies. I'm sorry.
So
what else did this influence? Shaun of the Dead. It probably influenced Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because I know that Edgar Wright's a huge fan of this movie.
It influenced the Evil Dead remake.
Yeah. Don't know if we'll ever do that one, but it influenced Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. Who'd have guessed that?
So then next time we'll be taking a look at Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Yeah. Not Evil Dead 2, The Quickening?
Evil Dead 2, Evil Deader.
Evil Deader! Oh, that's a good one.
I just realized that Evil or Dead would make more sense, but Evil Deader is funnier.
Evil Deadest.
Evil Dead 3, Evil Dead with a Vengeance.
Or just Evil Dead 2, Texas Blood Money.
Live for your Evil Dead.
Live for your Evil Dead.
A good day to Evil Dead. Anyway.
I'm sorry. I must have missed 60 minutes. You do Alan Rickman better than I do.
I'm sorry. I must have missed 60 minutes.
It's a good movie, but I apparently don't like it as much as you do. It's your favorite movie on the podcast. Okay. Hopefully it goes up from here then,
Yeah.
Maybe, you'll just be like...
Evil Dead 2 is my favorite.
Maybe that should be a running joke, just every time we do a podcast, you'll just say, you know what, I take it back. This is my favorite movie of the podcast. This might shock you, but my favorite movie of the podcast was Batman for... No, I'm kidding.
How dare you? Get out of here, Leonard Maltin.
Leonard Maltin. I don't know what his... I actually do have... I think I did find the ratings for some of the movies we did on the podcast. Fuck, where is it? His favorite movie of the podcast was... let me see... Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back, which makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
4 out of 4 stars. But that doesn't fully redeem him, though.
No. All right.
Yeah, roll the Andy Griffith.
Griffith clip.
Yeah.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.